The fire trucks were already racing down the street when I stepped outside, the wail of their sirens drowning out everything else. But then something odd happened. Instead of the usual flurry of activity you'd expect when disaster strikes, there was only one person making noise. And it wasn't a firefighter. No, it was Karen Donaldson, the HOA president. There she was, standing in front of her big, gleaming house, her arms flailing as she screamed about parking violations, as if that was what mattered right then. The fire was across the street, threatening to swallow up the Miller family's home, but Karen wasn't having it. She marched up to the fire hose with all the self-righteous fury of a woman convinced she could control everything, even in the face of disaster. And then she did it. She cut the damn hose, just like that. I'll never forget the sound of water bursting into the air like some giant geyser, catching everyone off guard. It felt like the air itself turned to fire. The firefighters scrambled, cursing and slipping as they tried to salvage the situation. And in the chaos, the Miller house started to collapse. Fire climbed up the porch and the cat leapt from the second story, miraculously landing in the arms of one of the firefighters. But none of that mattered to Karen. She was still standing there, clipboard in hand, smiling as if she'd just won some victory. That's the kind of woman she was. Self-important, unaware of the devastation she caused. And it didn't end there. No, Karen didn't just leave things to the firefighters. Oh no, once the flames were out, she sauntered over to the Millers, making sure to note every single violation she could find. "Your house melted onto the HOA property," she muttered with zero empathy. "You could have used the main road." I couldn't believe it. While their home burned down, Karen was talking about bylaws and landscaping violations. The fire chief was beside himself. He called her out on the spot. "You endangered lives," he said. But Karen didn't care. She just shook it off, too busy inspecting her precious rose tiles. By the time the fire was under control, the Millers had lost everything. Their kitchen was incinerated. Their son's high school trophies gone. And Karen, she didn't even apologize. She just kept on with her petty, controlling ways. Of course, the whole thing blew up on the news. "Hose hacker Karen," they called her. Everyone shared the clip. The memes flooded the internet. The subreddit exploded with fury. And as the comments rolled in, the HOA did nothing. A sterile statement, that's all. No apology, no action. Just more silence from the people who were supposed to be looking out for the community. But Karen, she was untouchable. Or so she thought. You see, Karen was the HOA. Literally. She was the president. She was the one who decided how things ran on Maplewood Lane, and for a long time no one dared challenge her. But that day something changed. We weren't just going to let it slide. The neighbors, they were done. We weren't waiting for justice anymore. We were going to make sure Karen got exactly what she deserved. The morning after the fire, the air felt different. The smell of smoke still hung thick, but the neighborhood, it had shifted. No one said it out loud, but we all felt it. Karen had crossed a line. It was time for her to answer for what she'd done. The Millers were in shock, standing in front of what was left of their home, staring at the remains. The whole neighborhood knew it was bad. I mean, you could feel the silence in the air. It was heavy. No one knew what to say. But everyone knew the truth. Karen had gone too far. And then there she was. Karen in her pristine pantsuit, clipboard in hand, marching down the street like she was still in charge. She didn't even acknowledge the devastation she had caused. Instead, she started lecturing the Millers about violations and damage to the HOA's landscaping. She didn't even stop to offer sympathy. I could see it in the others. They were done. Raj Patel, who usually kept to himself, was already typing away on his laptop, digging into the bylaws. Sasha was recording it all. Linda stood there with her phone out, pretending to check the weather app, but really documenting every word Karen said. It was like everyone knew this was the beginning of something bigger. Karen stood her ground, of course. She was Karen, after all. The woman who thought she could do whatever she wanted, who thought she was above everyone else. But the rest of us? We were ready. The neighborhood was ready. It was time for a little bit of karma. The next day, Operation Karma began. And we started small. A flamingo here, a flamingo there. Slowly but surely, Karen's perfect little world started to unravel. Every morning there were more flamingos, more signs of rebellion. The residents were getting creative. Raj hacked into the HOA website. Sasha launched a viral video. Benny reached out to his old firefighter buddies, and suddenly Karen's perfect world was falling apart. The pranks weren't random. They were calculated. A fire hydrant placed in front of Karen's house. A flash mob of teenagers doing a fire-themed dance. Fake newsletters mocking her. The HOA board. They were starting to question her. Even Martha, one of the board members, suggested sending the Millers a gift basket, but Karen wouldn't hear it. Things only escalated from there. By the time Karen called the cops on the block party, no one cared. Dale fired up the grill, the music blared, and people came out to show support for the Millers. When the cops showed up, they didn't take Karen's side. They grabbed hot dogs and posed for selfies with Sasha. It was the first sign that Karen's grip on power was slipping. But it wasn't just pranks. We had something real. We dug into Karen's finances. Raj found a suspicious invoice, $5,000 for water features. Funny thing was, it was billed to her personal address, the same one where she'd installed her koi pond. Suddenly, all the pieces clicked into place. We weren't just dealing with a petty HOA president. We were dealing with someone who had been stealing from the neighborhood. And when the final showdown came, it was glorious. Raj, with all his evidence, presented it at the HOA meeting. Slide after slide showing Karen's abuse of power, her misuse of HOA funds, and her personal enrichment. Karen tried to stop him, but it was too late. The damage had been done. A vote was called. And while Karen survived by a single vote, the cracks were already showing. The illusion of control she'd held over the neighborhood was slipping away. By the time the block party rolled around, Karen had lost all the power she'd once held. The neighborhood had come together. And as the sun set behind the inflatable fire truck parked right in front of her house, Karen sat in silence on her porch. She'd lost. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about community. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter how small or petty the fight seemed. We hadn't just beaten Karen. We'd taken back our neighborhood. And when Karen finally left, it was like a weight had been lifted. The neighborhood was free. The Millers were home, rebuilt and loved. And Karen, well, she left quietly without a word. That was the last we saw of her. For the first time in years, Maplewood Lane was at peace. But the story doesn't end there. We all know that. You can run from karma, but it has a way of finding you. And I can't help but wonder how long before Karen starts all over again somewhere else. How long before she finds someone else to push around. Because one thing's for sure, she won't be forgotten. And neither will the lesson we learned. When someone cuts a fire hose, the fire's not the only thing that burns.